I'm Karaleigh Garrison, singer-songwriter, self-care coach for burnt-out moms, and your host of the Seeking Sunshine podcast, where we find the positive in the trials of life.
There are times when life just brings you down, 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 down to the ground. And it's hard when you can't see the light, 'cause things don't look so bright. So now it's time to reframe and retrain your brain. It's time to look for the good. You know that you should. Why don't you join me? 'Cause I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Oh, oh, oh. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine.
I'm so excited to share this new version of my single Seeking Sunshine with you in my upcoming album. I don't have a release date yet, but stay tuned, it's coming up. Are you looking for ways to support my podcast? If so, then please like it, subscribe it, and leave it a review. Did you know that if you leave a review, it helps my podcast get shown to more people? I would so appreciate it if you could leave some words in the review box and let people know. Share this with your friends and family and just tell them about the episodes that you really like and some of the takeaways that you've personally received and that have helped you out. Do you have an amazing story to share? It's my belief that we all do, that we've all been through really, really tough things, and that when we share our stories, it's beneficial for us, but it's also beneficial for everyone who gets to hear it. We all have stories of overcoming that we can teach what we've learned to other people and inspire and uplift those around us. So if you feel called to share your story, please reach out to me. You can email me at seekingsunshinepodcast@gmail.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Seeking Sunshine podcast. I am so thankful that you are here to listen, and I hope that this will bring some sunshine to your day. We have a really, really beautiful guest. Her name is Shanenn Bryant, and she has such a beautiful spirit about her. Like, her story is so sad and she had so much happen to her, and yet she has used it for so much good in this world. So I'm really, really excited to share this with you. So Shanenn is an ACA, an adult child of an alcoholic, and she understands the adult challenges that come from growing up in that environment. After many years suffering from jealousy and insecurity in relationships, she is now a life coach and the host of the Jealousy Junkie podcast, helping others overcome jealousy, build self-confidence, and reclaim their self-worth. She's really an inspiration, and I hope that you will go check out her podcast. And if you love this episode and everything she has to say, please share this, because this can do so much good in the world. There's so many people who feel like they are alone, and they're really not. And the more that we can connect to the people that are around us, the more that we will grow to love each other, and just the better that our world will be. So I'm so excited for Shanenn to be here, and let's dive right into her episode. Hi, Shanenn. Welcome to the Seeking Sunshine podcast.
Hi, happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's just dive right in. I want to hear all about you and your story.
Sure. Well, let's see. I grew up, my father was an alcoholic, so it really led to some challenges and behavioral challenges that I had in my adulthood. And so really have spent many years trying to navigate all of that, figure it out, and how I can take what happened and, overcome it and make it a positive in my life. And so that's what I've been on this journey to do.
That's the sunshine. That's how, flipping the script and like finding some way to grow through your challenges. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, if you would have asked me 8 years ago if I would be helping people overcome their jealousy, I would have said, there's no way. One, I really thought that it was just the way that I was made. Like, that's just how I am. And I kind of got a bad hand and I just have to deal with it. And the second reason was I thought I was the only one. had no idea that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that struggle with jealousy and anxiety in their relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we underestimate how much we can grow
Yeah.
and like what the future looks like. We just think we're kind of stuck in this moment and that what we already know is about where we're stuck. That's where we're at, But we have so much potential for growth. And like this just shows that, you look back 8 years ago and it's like how you never would have believed where you are today.
Yeah, it's such a good point because I heard somebody talk about, and I've done this exercise before, where, if you write down on a Post-it all the stuff you have to get done this week, and it's like this big long list of 15 or 20 things, and then you ask somebody what they want to accomplish by the end of next year, and they usually say like one thing or two things. And so we definitely, overestimate what we can get done today, but underestimate what we can get done in a year or so.
Absolutely. So if you want to take us back to the beginning of your story
Yeah.
and what the darkness like really looked like.
Sure. So, growing up in that environment, it was always difficult because one, childhood was just not the same. I rarely could have friends over either because, just worried about if my dad was going to come home and how he was going to be, or if he didn't come home, and then how was my mom going to be, in response to that. So it's really difficult to have people over and have normal kind of overnights like other children did. And then also hard to go spend the night at someone's house because I was always worried about what was happening at home, what I might be missing, being there to sort of protect my mom. So it just made it difficult. And, the last straw when it got really bad, my dad, was chasing my mom through the house and eventually out into the front yard with a gun. And so, holding a gun to her, it's really hard to go to school the next day and learn multiplication and division when that's something that happened the night before, so um there was a lot of things that I didn't remember for the longest time, or just really had a hard time remembering school in the early years, and certainly a hard time learning as other children would as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like your childhood was kind of stolen from you in so many ways.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were almost every day where you get into this mode of thinking like, okay, we always, of course, had chores to do, and there really wasn't anything wrong with that, but it was, oh my gosh, let me do all of my chores and make sure my brother's chores are done and make sure everything is perfect, because maybe that'll make him in a better, make him in an okay mood and not give him something to be upset about. So I was always in that sort of people pleasing mode of let me make sure that everything is okay, to see if that makes a difference, or make
Yeah,
sure that I'm not upsetting him.
because as a child, you don't understand that, others' emotions are not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you take all that onto yourself, and that's just detrimental to children
Mhm.
and to anybody really.
Yeah, and certainly the disease, not my fault, but that's what I took into adulthood. So my parents finally divorced when I was 12, and my dad was, randomly picking up me and my younger brother at the time. And there were a lot of disappointing times where he was supposed to pick us up and he didn't, of course, but then when he did, he had told us that he was in AA and he was getting, all of the help through AA and really doing a phenomenal job. And I know he did try that a few times, but when he picked us up, he had a beer in between his lap. And I was like, that's it. I don't want to have anything to do with you as long as you're drinking. So I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to speak to you. But I was 12.
I was gonna say you were 12, and so you probably like remembered everything that had happened that led up to the divorce, and so like forgiving him because you were a little bit older, like especially I bet
Yeah.
compared to your brother who I don't know how much younger he was, but like even the younger kids just don't remember as much as the hard stuff. And so
Hmm.
in some ways maybe it's easier for them to forgive.
Well, yeah, and I think we all have our own challenges. It's very interesting in my family, my older brother's 6 years older and my younger brother 6 years younger, and each
Wow.
one of us yeah, so we all have a different experience. I think my older brother really got the brunt of it. He, of course, would stand up and protect my mom, and then a lot of that violence went to him, and just really holding a lot of that responsibility, being the oldest. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, my younger brother, by the time, he was 6 or so when my parents divorced, so he wasn't around it too much and doesn't remember a lot of what I remember and my older brother, but it affects him differently, not having a father around who really, just as a boy and needing their father, he didn't have that. So, yeah, we all dealt with it differently.
It's
I think
really interesting to me how and we tend to not believe this, I think, culturally, but like every single person really does have a unique experience, even if they're in the same family, even if it seems like they should, like, oh, you guys all had the same parents. Don't you have, an agreement on like what happened? And it's no, it's really individual and not in like a really like in a really personal way because of how each of us individually reacts to the things around us and how they just affect us so individually, and so we have to stop like judging each other
mm.
on how much trauma a person actually has because it's so deeply individual and personal.
Oh, yeah, great point. I mean, yes, it's all about the story, and what it means to you, right? When something happens. I mean, I have twin uncles. One of them just recently passed away, but they they were twins, identical twins, grew up in the same family, same household, same parents, all of that, and they were such different individual people, and they looked at things differently, and if you ask them their experiences, they're gonna tell you different stories.
Oh yeah, my husband is a twin.
Oh,
Although what's really funny about my husband is that my husband has dark skin. He's about 20% Hispanic, and his twin brother is white as I am. And so they don't even look like siblings, let alone twins. Obviously, they're not identical. But so yeah, their experiences are drastically different. They are very, very different people. And it's just,
yeah.
it's life. And so it's really sad when people treat twins as the same because
Mhm.
they are their own individual people and they deserve to be their own individual people.
100%. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody experiences, those things differently, and so what one may consider a traumatic event, somebody else might not, and it's definitely important to remember that, and, especially siblings who grow up in that situation, they are all going to have different behavioral challenges, and all of us, all of me and my siblings, we all have differences, that we struggle through. And so,
That's why it's so important to validate each other.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
And
continue,
yeah,
continue.
no, even if you can't understand it or your experience isn't the same or you don't feel the same way, it is theirs. And it's very important to remember that. I think, and it kind of goes along the lines with the jealousy. It really has such a bad, people have such remarks when someone says they're jealous of something. It's just something that's really filled with a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment, which is why a lot of people don't talk about it. There's not a lot of people that talk about jealousy, even though so many people struggle with it.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I wanna clarify this for 1 second. Are you a jealousy coach or you have a podcast about jealousy?
Yeah, I'm a jealousy coach.
Okay,
I
that's what
have
it
a
is.
podcast called Jealousy Junkie. Yes, that really it's me sharing my experiences. I also have people on, professionals in their field that come on and talk about different things that relate to it. But yeah, it's really mostly letting people know that they're not alone, because that's one of the things where you really feel isolated when you talk to your family and friends and let them know some of the things that are kind of going on in your head or how jealous you are. we get a lot of common responses like, there's nothing to worry about. Why are you worried about something before it happens? Just, people trying to help, but that makes us feel really alone and like we're very different and nobody else is experiencing this. And it's just not true.
I love this, and I love that we can look at your story through this lens of jealousy and how you've been able to turn that around to help other people experiencing their own trauma.
Hmm. Yeah. And a lot of it, does come from things that happen in someone's childhood. So they could have been in a situation similar to mine, or it could be that they were in a relationship where there was some infidelity or a series of relationships with infidelity. And so all of those things, like you mentioned before, really can, make a mark on someone and really influence the way that they behave moving forward. Is jealousy is never about the present. It's always about the past or the future. So it's either these are the things that happen in my past and I'm going to protect myself and this is why I'm this way. And then, protecting because I don't want those things to happen in the future.
Yeah, and jealousy is not about the other person, it's about you. It's always about yourself and what you're experiencing and your experience of life and your history. It's not really about that person who has more. It's about how you wish you had something different.
Yeah. And, the kind of jealousy that I coach on is really the jealousy in romantic relationships. So, in terms of what you're talking about, is more envy. And definitely people have that where I'm envious because this person was promoted at work. This person has more money. They have a better house. They have a better car, all of those things. That's really about wanting something that someone else has. Where I coach is when we're in relationships and we're worried, we're jealous that someone's going to take what we have. Usually our partner being, we're insecure that someone's going to come along and our partner's going to think that they're better, or our partner's going to cheat on us, or all of the different things that we have in our head that we're worried about.
Thank
Yeah.
you for that clarification. That's very helpful.
Yeah. And really, that's where this came from because, when I told my dad at 12 years old, I never want to see you, I never want to speak to you as long as you're drinking, he took that to heart. And I didn't speak to him again until I was 25. And that was just a kind of a brief conversation. And so I grew up thinking, well, if my own dad doesn't love me, then why would anyone else? And I just didn't feel worthy of love. I didn't feel like anyone was really going to love me. Um, and so I was either in relationships that were bad for me or I was ruining the good ones because of my insecurities and jealousy.
And it's so, so, so sad. And yet it's also really, really common.
Oh, yeah.
So, so common. And it's
Hmm.
heartbreaking. But
Hmm.
that's why, your work is so important, is to help people understand that like they have value and that they have worth, and getting at the root of all those underlying causes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, because we can grow up and the things that we carry for years and years and years without taking inventory on them, all of those beliefs that we have, we just don't go back and inventory that and go, wait a second, is this still true? Is this still right? And that's a big part of it, is going back and saying, well, wait a second, is this really true? And I always use, and with my coaching clients, and I talk about it on the podcast, the power of one, ONE, open to a new either explanation, experience, evidence, all of those things. And that's where, when you're trying to heal from these types of things, it's getting curious and saying, well, could it be something else? And so really looking at, is there different evidence? I have um people that have said before, I think all men cheat. Every male in my family was a cheater. And so asking them to go back and go, Are you open to new, like, really look at this? Is there different evidence out there that that's not true? Is it every single man in your family? Or if it is, are there other men that you've seen outside of that who aren't? And so that's just part of a small part of the process.
That's really cool. I love that because the thing is that we can find evidence for whatever we think is true. You
Oh,
have a
yeah.
thought, you have a belief, you can find evidence that it's true. And so you have to flip the script and say, what if something else was true? And start teaching your brain to look for the evidence of the good things and look for the
That's right.
evidence of the joy.
Yeah. Exactly that. That confirmation bias when we go, this is what I think, or this is what I know. And yeah, our brain is lazy. It's just going to go, I'm going to point right to this. Here's all of the evidence that proves that you're right in that. And so we need to look for new experiences and evidence and explanations for some of those things that we've been holding on to for a long time. And in my case, it wasn't that my dad didn't love me. He had a disease. He was an alcoholic. He, yes, chose alcohol over me, but it didn't mean that he didn't love me. And that really had nothing to do with my worth and if I was worthy of love.
Absolutely. And okay, I swear I say this in every single podcast episode, but my favorite quote is from Frozen, and it says, people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. And it helps you to change the way that you look at yourself and the way that you look at other people. Because if you look at your dad from that lens of he was stressed, he had this disease, he was not acting, in the way that maybe he would have chosen to if he hadn't had that going on in his life, right? And so he was
Oh, yeah.
acting out of stress. And when we act out of stress, we're never our best selves. We're never
No,
making our best choices, you know.
no.
Yeah, and so as I look at myself, it's like, I was at this start. I have 3 kids with autism. So
Oh, my.
so my life's a bit stressful, and so this weekend I was at, Walmart with all 3 of them, and I was like getting really upset because of their behavior. It was so so bad. We had run all these errands and all these things, and then I was like, "Oh my gosh, my blood sugar's low. I haven't eaten in like 4 hours. I need to eat something. That's why I'm feeling so upset at my kids and their behavior." And so I just love that quote because it helps me look at myself differently, but it also helps me have more compassion for those around me, and it helps me forgive them quicker and more
Yeah.
easily when they, do things that are hurtful.
What a great example of that. Yes. Yeah, I mean, definitely checking in on those factors to go, wait a second, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I tired? What is it that's making me this way? And yeah, and what I didn't understand, and again, getting curious and asking questions and really digging in is, my parents married very, very young. My dad was extremely, as you said, stressed about, oh my gosh, and now we have a baby coming and I'm supposed to provide. And my father was an alcoholic and this was passed down to me. And so, just being accepting and just open to, they may not have known how to handle it or how to overcome it. And so just being open to that and realizing, like, there's more to it than um
Then he's the bad guy and you're the good guy.
yeah.
We so
Yeah.
often want to stick people in the boxes of like they're a bad person and that person's a good person, but pretty much nobody is entirely bad or good. We are all humans who sometimes make bad choices and sometimes we make good choices, and we're all intricate, complicated humans. And
Yeah.
so, like, no, it doesn't forgive all of his behavior. It doesn't make his behavior okay, but it does offer an explanation that
Mhm.
helps you turn it around for yourself and change the way you think about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it offers, as you said, that new explanation of, it's not that I'm not worthy of love, it's not that he doesn't love me. it's these other things that have nothing to do with me. And so that was just a really big eye opener to go, oh, okay. So then that makes it different. And knowing that new information, then I can make changes based on that.
Yeah, for sure. So take us back to your 12-year-old self and how you know, grew up as a teenager without a dad and how that affected you. And it's so interesting because it wasn't just that you didn't have a dad in your life, it was a choice, which had to have a significant bearing on that, right?
Yeah. And what's strange is, then I didn't know that I was making like such a stance, that I think back and go, okay, I don't know where that came from, but I just knew that, I didn't want to be around it, and I didn't want my little brother around it. And I just felt like it had broken up our family. So I just, you know, didn't want to be around it. And then what I felt from that time forward for the longest time was it didn't matter. Like, I thought none of that really affected me. And I went through life going, my dad missed the important parts of my life, dating and, just all of the parts that you want your dad to be there or you think your dad should be there for. He missed them all. So I felt like, well, I don't need him now. You missed all of that. There's no reason to have a relationship with him. It's not going to make any difference. I'm okay without him. And of course, none of that is true. That
It's so funny. I'm a singer-songwriter and I wrote this song called Apathy, and it's a love song to apathy, but it was exploring this idea of like one of the tools that we use when we are mad or scared or stressed sometimes is to put that cover of apathy over it. Like, whatever, I don't really care. I don't really need this. And if you can convince yourself that you don't care, it's easier to cope in the moment.
yeah.
And, whether it's completely detrimental or even a little bit beneficial in the long run, as long as you eventually, remove that and start deep diving into those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
that's awesome. I would love to hear it. That's amazing.
well, I'll
Yeah.
put it at the end of the episode for you.
Great.
But yeah, I've definitely felt that in my own way, just as a mom, and like I said, I have three on the spectrum, and as a result, life is just like never ever fair, like for moms, like it's they broke another thing of mine. There's no retribution. There's nothing I can do about it. I just have to suck it up and deal with, being screamed at or being hit or everything I own being torn apart. It's
Right.
motherhood, right? Motherhood's unfair. And so I've had those times where instead of embracing these emotions of hurt and pain, where I've been like, it's so much easier if I just don't care.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you can convince yourself of that. And so that's what I'm seeing in your story is like,
Mhm.
there you go. It's, I don't care anymore. And then eventually you had to come to terms with that and really
Yeah.
feel those emotions and let them exist.
Yeah, and you're right, was that the best thing for me to do at the time? Probably, maybe. That was the way that I got through it, and the way that I got through not having a dad that was reaching out to me or that was in my life or that, was coming to any school events that I was doing. So, yeah, I think it was just easier to go, I don't need him.
Well, and I guess I should mention that it's a love song to apathy.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yes, I get it. It's not like a long-term healthy coping mechanism, but
Yeah.
sometimes in that exact moment, it is what you need for a
Yeah.
minute. And then you
Yeah.
can go back and process.
Yes, and which is exactly what happened, because at a certain point you go, you know, all of this stuff is showing up, and I keep having this same issue over and over, or these same set of fears over and over, or these same situations are happening. Why? Why is that? And then having to go back and go, okay, so that did affect me. It did, um, cause some pain, and I have to look at that now. And that's really tough to do
It
sometimes.
is really tough. But as you're talking, I'm realizing that like when you take that apathy and you put that in there, as the time goes by, you mature. Even if you're an adult and your trauma is motherhood trauma,
Yeah.
we are always maturing. And then hindsight's 2020. So it's easier sometimes to go back and process those things as you've matured more, and as you can look back and look at the whole picture, you see
Mhm.
things more clearly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I always tell people, and you keep your journals and you could go back even a month ago, but certainly a year ago at the stuff that you were writing or the stuff that was on your mind at the time. It's amazing the difference of like, "Oh, really? I was so hung up on that or so caught up on that," or that was really, a big stressor, and now, things are different. So, yeah, same.
It's
Mhm.
true. So talk us through those early teenage years and early adulthood, and you eventually did talk to your dad again.
I did. My mom would always kind of push me to have a relationship with my dad of, I get it, but I just don't want you to regret it. And I just wasn't ready. For the longest time, I was like, "No, I I don't see the benefit. I'm not into it." But eventually, I got to the point where I wanted to ask those questions. Like, I really wanted to overcome my jealousy in relationships, my insecurities, and really kind of figure out where that was coming from. And I knew part of that was probably having a conversation with him and just diving into that a little bit. And so when we first started to talk, I was really wanting an apology from him. I wanted him to say, "Hey, sorry that I did this." I wanted him to understand what my life had been like and what it was like with him being violent and always being afraid and scared as a little kid. And so I wanted him to say sorry for it, but that just wasn't gonna happen, and part of it's being an alcoholic, but also part of it, what I later learned is, well, no one wants to be reminded of all of their failures. So I was really approaching it the wrong way. And I had to figure out, like, how am I going to get through this or have conversations with him without that apology? And just really being accepting that it's not the apology that I need. Um, and so when I started to just talk and have conversations, it opened up a whole new beautiful world. And I was fortunate enough for the last 3 years to have a relationship with my father and find out all of these amazing, wonderful things about him. And so, we just had our 3rd Father's Day where me and him and both of my brothers all were out Father's Day having breakfast, and I could tell he was really happy about that, and I will tell you, I'm so thankful that I went through that and I was willing to do that. We just lost him in September. And so knowing that, oh my gosh, I was able to finally have a relationship with him, finally get some clarity and some answers, but more just putting kind of at peace or at rest with some of the things for me, um, was amazing. And so really happy to have had that experience with him.
That's so beautiful. And it's so, so hard to come at situations like this and not come from that place of trauma and hurt. Like
Yeah.
it feels impossible even. Like, do you have any idea how much you hurt me and how much that affected? And like, you're right though. Like, it's not actually helpful. And nobody who's getting confronted like that, or at least for the most part, most people are going to be defensive.
Mhm.
Most people are going to be like, yeah, but, wait a minute, because they're feeling so attacked. And you might
Yeah.
be right. But at the same time, that approach does kind of lack compassion. And so we do have to work through some of that trauma on our own without relying on somebody else's apology and somebody else's,
Yeah.
like,
Well, yeah, and I mean, it made sense afterwards, and that was part of the reason that he wasn't really in contact with me for all of those years. I mean, I was the one holding his feet to the fire, and I was gonna remind him every single time I saw him or talked to him or had anything, anything that, "Hey, you did this and you really screwed up, and look how bad you screwed up." And as much as somebody is sorry for what they've done or feels apologetic, it's hard to hear. Now, certainly people can get to that point, and I do think it's something that they even teach in AA is like you have to get to that point where you do make those apologies. And eventually he did, but it was sort of on his not on his terms, but it was when I stopped saying, "Hey, I'm holding this mirror in front of you, and I'm gonna keep reminding you of everything that you did." And also understanding that he knew all of that.
don't we all?
Right.
Don't we
Right.
all? We know what we've done. We know, and being reminded of our flaws by other people doesn't help because usually they're at the forefront of our mind.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And we're usually worse on ourselves than anyone else. So I can imagine how bad he was. And I mean, I knew that even up until the end of how much regret he had. And I know that if he had the strength to do it differently, he would have. So
It's just so true.
yeah.
It's so true. Again, with that, the people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. Like, one of those things is like covering up pain. When a person is in pain to a certain degree, they will do anything to make it stop. And that's how addictions are born. They are born of
Mhm.
pain. And so usually, just taking away the addiction, it doesn't fix the underlying problem that caused it in the first place. And so that's just another plug for compassion for
Right.
people because it's coming from pain.
Oh yeah. 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 Very easy to overlook sometimes because we just want to, we know how we're feeling and how it's hurting us and how it's affecting our lives. So it's hard to look at sometimes, and understandably so. And some people who have been in my situation or worse feel like there are things that are unforgivable, and that's okay too if that's how they feel. And it has to be on the hurt person, on my terms of when I'm gonna reach out to my dad, and that's why, I'm glad that my mom, pushed it and put the seed there, but it wasn't gonna happen until I was ready for that to happen, and I think, we don't want anyone to push themselves to do something that they're not comfortable with doing, so
Yep, absolutely. I don't know, maybe I should mention that so my dad's amazing. I have like the greatest dad ever. But my husband has PTSD and anxiety and depression and has been through, addiction and recovery and all that
yeah,
over and over and over again. Like, we've definitely been through the ringer. So that's where my experiences kind of stem from. And, that forgiveness, it's hard, but it's actually not about the other person. It's actually about you. Forgiveness is about allowing yourself to heal and doesn't even actually have that much to do with like the perpetrator. It's about healing your own heart.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I say, having to heal without the apology is really important, because if you're hanging on to, I need an apology and that's going to make it better, sometimes you're not going to get that.
Well, and even if you do, how often does that apology
Ha-
come and you're
right.
like, "Wait a minute. That's not good enough. That doesn't solve all of the pain that I'm in. That doesn't solve all of the trauma you put me through because you said
Yes.
I'm sorry." Like, that's what? And so we
Yeah.
expect it to be like this magical thing, and then if it does come and we're like, "Oh, wait, no, wait, that's not good enough still."
Yeah, 15 apologies doesn't make it okay, right? Like 15 apologies don't, there's a point where it doesn't become or feel like an apology anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you go from there to building this
Yeah,
jealousy coaching business and your podcast? And tell us about that.
sure. Well, I was sharing my story. I spoke at a ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics group, a women's ACA group, and just to tell my story and share. And it was supposed to be an hour-long talk. And at the end, through that story, I mentioned some of the things that I struggle with as an adult, my insecurities in relationships, my jealousy in relationships. And I told a few stories about how bad that jealousy got. Um, and at the end, they asked for questions, and all of these virtual hands went up. And it was person after person after person going, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that people thought that were jealous like me. I had no idea that there were people that thought the same way that I did." And it was just person after, female after female with that. And I thought, okay, that's what I need to talk about and to let people know there are other people out there that are experiencing this very same thing. And so that's when um, I started the podcast and started coaching for jealousy, and even opened my eyes even more to how many people there are that struggle with it.
That's so cool. And what's so, I don't know, interesting to me about that is like when you're in it, it feels alone. It
Yeah.
feels entirely like you kind of self-isolate. Um, because you
Hmm.
don't want to like spread that negativity to other people. We're so taught of like only talk about positive things. People only want to hear happy things. And so you're like, oh, I'm gonna hide all this hurt. I'm gonna shove all this pain down and just put on a happy face,
Yeah.
right? And so then we feel isolated and alone. And the more that you talk about it, and the more that you share your story and your pain, the more that other people around you feel like they can do that too. And then when we open it up to the world, that's when we can start healing it.
Hmm.
I've been reading Brene Brown books lately, which I
Love.
feel like I'm behind the curve because I'm reading her like early books right now. But one of the things that she says about shame is that it can't like live in the light and in the open. It only exists when you have it hidden.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you open up about your situation, it kind of just disappears.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we find a lot of times. And because the problem is, um, you know, even when I was struggling with it and I would share some of the outlandish things that I would do when I was having a jealous meltdown or on the verge of one. And if I would share that with a friend or family member, it was like, okay, you are there. Like, what is wrong with you?
Crazy
And
ex-girlfriend status.
yes, I mean, and that's what, not just from our friends and family, but a lot of times from the partner that we're with, the one that is unfortunately kind of feeling the wrath of that jealousy, is that's what they're going to tell you. Like, you are a crazy jealous person, like there's something wrong with you. And so then that just gets amplified and you feel more shame, guilt, embarrassment, and like there's something that's unfixable or that's just innately wrong with you, and it's not
And
true.
broken.
And broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. So it definitely helps to talk about it. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I get is people going, "Oh my gosh, thank you for you telling the stories, because we don't want to. And thank you for being open and sharing the embarrassing things that happen, because it's a difficult thing to do, because that you may be judged on it, or that people aren't going to understand. And so yeah. Now, if I were ever single again, I may have a hard time finding a date. So good thing I've got to keep this marriage thing going. People are like,
Oh,
"Isn't that the girl that was super jealous?" No, thank you. But no, it's always a work in progress, but
for sure. But yay, you're married. That's
Yeah.
marriage can be beautiful and can be so hard.
Yes.
But it is beautiful. And it's just so we look at relationships like marriage and whatnot, and we go, oh, the other person should be filling me up, should be giving me everything I need. But the actual truth is that we need to come to our relationships with this understanding that we're kind of both broken people. We're both not whole. And the way that we actually make this relationship work is by working on ourselves and making ourselves as whole and healed as we can. And then being forgiving when we see the broken parts of our spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, I don't know if my husband should have stayed or not. Thank goodness he did, but thank goodness he stuck it out. But yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, but I think, the difference between 8 years ago and today, it's like a completely different life. And so, um, when you're able to see that on the other side. And my husband's a very different person. And I think that happens just as like you said, we're always maturing and growing. We've been together 13 years. So I would hope that we have changed somewhat in that 13 years. But yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So tell us more about your coaching business and your podcast and how we can find it
Mhm.
and all those
Yeah.
things.
So the podcast is called Jealousy Junkie. It's anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, anywhere that you have your podcast or that you listen to your podcast. And then the website is just jealousyjunkie.com. And so I do one-on-one coaching. I'm opening up group coaching in February. So that's going to be something new and a little bit different. But I do have one-on-one coaching at the moment. And so people can go on the website and look at the different coaching options. But it's really focused on kind of three main things. And I think it's important, anything that we are trying to grow or improve, it's changing your goals, changing your habits, and changing your mind. And so those are the three key areas that we work on in coaching.
Ooh, I love those. Those are great. Those are
Yeah.
three great areas.
Yeah.
Do you do them in that order or are they in a different order?
Um, it's changing. We kind of start with a little bit of mindset because really it's about like who do we want to become and not just setting goals. So because we have to come from it from a, if I try to achieve my goals that I'm setting from the same mindset that I have right now as this person, I'm not going to get there. So yeah. So it's a little bit of a mix.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, as we wrap up, any final like words of wisdom that you want to share with us?
I think just really knowing and understanding that most likely the things that you're going through, your thoughts that you have, as wild as they may seem, or as much as you may have talked to someone else and they didn't understand it or they can't see from your point of view, just know that chances are very, very likely that there's other people out there that are experiencing what you're experiencing and what you're going through. So you're really never alone in that.
I love that so much. That's one of the whole points of this podcast is to like get our stories told.
Yeah.
It's so like therapeutic to get to tell your story, but it's really eye-opening to hear other people's stories and to just, maybe somewhat experience like the spectrum of humanity. But then also like we're not alone. And who knows who you're gonna relate to and be like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's my story is so similar. And so hopefully, my audience can reach out to you or whoever they're really, vibing with so that they can understand that they're not alone and be connected because connection is so, so important.
Yes. And thank you so much for what you do, because I do think it's important for people to hear other people talk about things that they've experienced, because, just as we were saying, two people can experience the same things and be different. I think it's true too that I could say something one way and then you say it, the same thing, but somebody's going to connect with you and your story a lot more than someone else. And so I think it's important. And so thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I truly love it. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you like the question, which I seem to have missed. Tell me about the sunshine. Where have you seen the sunshine in all the darkness?
Yeah. Well, I think there are two things that really stand out for me. The one where I finally did talk to my dad, have that relationship. There are so many things that I learned about him in the last 3 years before he passed that I'm so incredibly grateful that I got to do and that I got to hear and that now I understand, that I'll have with me for the rest of my life. So that was definitely a part of the sunshine. And then really being able to take something that I struggled with for decades and then figuring out, okay, how do I overcome this? How do I tame this jealousy? And then being able to turn that around and help other people kind of shortcut some of the things and help them to not feel so alone and understand that they, understand their self-worth and all of the things that go along with it. That just there's nothing better in this world than to be able to turn that around and help other people.
Oh, I
So that's
love
the
that.
sunshine.
I love it so much. This has been such a beautiful episode. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have such a beautiful day.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh man, thank you, Shanenn. What a beautiful episode. I got so much inspiration from that. She's been so resilient and overcome so much, and she really just showed us all like what's really possible. That it doesn't really matter where you've come from. You can use that to change the world, and that's exactly what Shanenn is doing. Please go check out her podcast. It's called Jealousy Junkie, and you can also check out her private one-on-one coaching and her group coaching at jealousyjunkie.com. And now for my very favorite takeaways. Number 1, we underestimate how much we can grow and what the future looks like. We think we're stuck in this moment and that what we already know is it, but we have so much potential for growth. Number 2, the things that we carry for years and years and years without taking inventory on them, all of those beliefs that we have, we need to go back and inventory that and go, is this still true? Is this still right? Number 3, the power of one, open to a new explanation, experience, and evidence. Number 4, we can find evidence for whatever we think is true. You have a thought, you have a belief, you can find evidence that it's true. So you have to flip the script and say, what if something else was true? And start teaching your brain to look for the evidence of the good things, of the joy. Number 5, the more that you talk about it and the more that you share your story and your pain, the more other people around you feel like they can do that too. Number 6, we need to come into our relationships with this understanding that we are both broken people. We are both not whole. The way we make this relationship work is by working on ourselves and making ourselves as whole and healed as we can, and then being forgiving when we see the broken parts of our spouse. Number 7, the things that you're going through, the thoughts that you have, as wild as they may seem, the chances are very high that there are other people out there that are experiencing what you're experiencing and what you're going through. So you're really never alone. And number 8, taking something I struggled with for decades and being able to turn that around and help other people shortcut some of the things and help them to not feel so alone and understand their self-worth, there's nothing better in this world. That's the sunshine. Oh man, Shanenn brought so much sunshine this episode. I'm so grateful she came to be on the show, and I hope that you guys will all check out her website and her podcast. She's so inspiring, and I just love to talk to her. She has such a beautiful soul. So before we end, I want to remind you to go check out my website, karaleiggarrison.com, especially if you're interested in coaching, and that's available to you. So as we wrap up, I'm going to end with a song, and it's the song that we talked about in the episode called Apathy.
feel your feelings. Sometimes it's just too hard to feel your feelings. So I stopped crying and went back to apathy. Dear apathy, I need you here with me. You calm the tears I cry. I go up and I go down with my emotions. You keep me on solid ground with these emotions. I shut them down and went back to apathy. Dear apathy, they say you're wrong for me, but I just don't care. I'm afraid that it's far worse not to have you. I can't handle myself when I'm without you. I'm tired of fighting, tired of feeling. It's overwhelming, so I went back to apathy. Dear apathy, are you in love with me?